Good morning and welcome back to the ZMC Business Hour. The business show brought to you by ZMC Network, a channel created to tackle local issues. We've returned after a 4-month break, quite an extensive break. And as you'll be aware, the world has been gripped by a pandemic. From myself and from the whole team at ZMC, we hope that you are all in the best of health, and we hope that the pandemic hasn't caused too many issues. The ZMC Business Hour is a business show where we give you a weekly business update, and we bring you the very best of entrepreneurs, business leaders, business influencers to come and share their wisdom and knowledge. So the past 3 months, 4 months, the globe has been in lockdown. The global economy has been absolutely shut down and brought to its knees. This isn't a local pandemic. This wasn't a regional pandemic. This was a global issue. And now, as we come out of lockdown and businesses begin to reopen, the real impact of the lockdown and the pandemic and coronavirus is now upon us. We hope to bring you business leaders and influencers in the next few weeks to give us some advice how to tackle the next few months and to see exactly what's going to happen. I myself have been speaking to business owners over the past few weeks, and quite rightfully there's a lot of confusion, a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of worry as to where will our businesses be in a month's time, where will our businesses be in 2 months' time. So it is a worrying time, but we are a strong nation, we are resilient, and we will get through this pandemic. Our guest today, a national business influencer, started life out as an accountant, became part of a Bhangra Group in the 80s and 90s, and then went on to become a deputy lieutenant. A national business influencer, has appeared on Channel 4 and many TV programs talking about business, and we're very honored to have him this morning. Can I introduce our guest this morning, Ninder Johal.
Good morning.
Ninder, Paji, thank you very much for coming this morning.
Looking very dapper.
Like yourself, I had to make an effort.
Very dapper.
So you're our first guest on our show, and we've appropriately named our show The Comeback. Comeback is a comeback for myself and a comeback for the Business Hour. And you yourself have been through 2 comebacks now.
Yeah, you could say
2009,
yeah.
and then after COVID.
Yeah.
So I've done some research on Google about you, and before you introduce yourself, I would just like to read something that I read on Google. So forget about what you currently do. Outside of your day job, Ninder is a board member of the Black Country LEP, the West Midlands 5G board, very controversial, governor of the University of Wolverhampton, elected member of the West Midlands CBI, non-executive director at Accord Housing, a trustee of the Albion Foundation, trustee of Victoria Academy, which is a set of primary schools. That's right. Previously, president of the Black Country Chamber of Commerce and a chair of charity, Steps to Work. You are also a board member of the West Midlands Growth Company, West Midlands India Partnership, the West Midlands Combined Authority, and the chair of Wolverhampton Town Fund.
That's right.
When do you do your day job? When do you do your day job?
It requires a lot of juggling. It requires a lot of time management.
And I think that my calendar is busy.
Yeah,
so you know what? Thank you very much for taking time.
No, it's fine.
I know it's a Sunday. It's Sunday morning. So it's early time for us today. Normally pronto morning.
Well, I had a pronto and a cup of tea.
You had a pronto.
And some nice yogurt.
So thank you very much for joining us today. If you could just introduce yourself to our viewers and just let people know who you are, please.
Yeah, so I don't know if you want me to go through the journey, but you're right, I do quite a number of these roles, and that was really my desire to put something back into the community. And look, and the other thing, Abid, is I do learn a lot from sitting on these boards. And I learn a lot, one, about the subject, which is outside my area, but I get a chance to sit and understand and hear from people much more qualified than I, and that in itself is a learning experience. And that then allows me then to be able to pass that on to other stakeholders, other people in the community. And listen, I don't know whether we'll have time, but people didn't know how to deal with the grants, they didn't know how to deal with legislation, that, you know, a lot of people didn't understand how this all worked. A lot of people were unsure about their jobs, about the recovery. And I think by being involved in these sort of groups of people, you have a much better understanding than a 9-to-5 work, and you don't know actually what's going on around the world. And listen, I was guilty of being 9-to-5. Was when I first got hit, and I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to chat about it, when my business got hit by another disruption.
Yes.
But that was a technological disruption.
Okay. So currently, what is your current
day
job or your business apart from all these?
Okay. So currently, I run and you've come to them. I run an events production company. So I do three things. I run an event production company, the Signature Awards, the Natural Entrepreneurship Awards. So we do it in Birmingham, we do Leicester. We
so
do
the Natural Entrepreneurship Awards.
Yes, so we do Leicester and the Signature Awards. So we do Leicester, we do Birmingham, Wolverhampton. We just had to cancel London.
Okay.
And we're looking to go to, believe it or not, Lahore.
Okay.
And we're looking to go to New Delhi in 2022.
Wow.
So that's one bit, and I'll tell you how that's been affected. I also run a music company, and that's interesting. In these difficult times, those sales have gone up because people are at home.
Yes.
They want to listen to music and they reminisce about the old times.
Yes.
Again, we'll chat about that. The third element is a property company. So I have industrial units. Thankfully, people have still continued to pay me their rents.
Okay.
Now, they weren't sure of their situation as to whether they should or shouldn't, and holiday payments are very complicated. So one's doing okay, one's doing well, and as you can imagine, where there's mass gatherings, which is the event side, that's been decimated. So, okay, good, terrible.
Fantastic. So, as an Asian business influencer, you've also been honoured, and you've been given the role and the title of Deputy Lieutenant.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
And we're proud.
Thank you.
That one of our own is in that position. So, could you just explain what that role is and what that role entails?
So I think someone somewhere decides they want to appoint deputy lieutenants who then represent the Lord Lieutenant, who then represents the Queen. And I assume, I don't know, they look for people in the community who are sort of well connected, well respected, my guess, and they would allow to represent the monarchy and the Lord Lieutenant. And I was asked whether I'd like to be one. I must admit, I said yes straight away. I wasn't quite sure of the role. I'd heard of it. But it's an honour for me. It's an honour for me, for the UK, as British born, for somebody of that calibre to say to me, would you be interested in that role? And what it does do, it's the bridge between the Lord Lieutenant, the Queen, and the people.
Yes.
So it's that bridge. Secondly, my job is then to recognise and to put forward people who I think have done a contribution to British society. So that's my job, is to keep, whether it's business or individuals, to keep a lookout and then recommend them for on. So we're talking about MBEs and those type of things. And that's my role, is to keep a look at that and to put forward people's names. And for people to come say to me, oh, by the way, listen, Mr. X or Miss X or Miss Y have done a superb job, I'd like to nominate them, and I'd encourage them what to do. Because the West Midlands, which I think is 4% of the UK population, we only have 2% of the awards.
To Asians? Or
generally, and to be honest with you, and it's a very good point, Asians even less.
Okay. So we'll talk about talk about awards.
So I think we need to correct that.
And I'd like to cover that because
we need to correct
that. Important for our viewers.
Yes, we need to correct.
So your journey began as an accountant.
Yeah.
That's a bit boring, so we'll leave that out of the way.
Yeah.
And then came the Bhangra Group called Catalogue.
Yeah.
As a youth, as a child, I grew up listening in my Walkman, my Sony Walkman, doing my paper rounds.
Yep.
Listening to the sound of Catalogue.
Yep.
And for the viewers who are 80s or 70s babies, they will remember Catalogue And for the millennials, they won't understand.
No, they won't.
Pure hardcore Bhangra.
Yeah.
So if you could play video 2, please, would you give the viewers a brief glimpse of your
That's fine.
peak time?
तू सोनिए दिल मेरे नू हाय तू मोनिए आज कोई सानू रंग विखा दे सीने साडे ठंड तू पा दे नच ले आ नच ले ओ नच ले नच ले नक नू हिला दे ते रौनक मिला दे नक नू हिला दे ते रौनक मिला दे मार के हिला दे वेड़ा नी आजा नच ले हालड़े माले के विच केड़ा नी आजा नच ले हालड़े ओ नक नू हिला दे ते रौनक मिला दे नक नू हिला दे ते रौनक मिला दे मार के हिला दे वेड़ा नी आजा नच ले हालड़े माले के विच केड़ा नी आजा नच ले हालड़े
Just listening to that gives me goosebumps. You know what? It takes me back 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
I was absolutely amazing. So, what was your role in this band?
So actually, I just thought I'd bring a CD, and that's me in the corner there as well. So it's
And we just caught a glimpse of you in that video.
Yeah, just towards the end. That was me just clapping at a beat, I think.
A very youthful Linda. So, what was your role in this band?
So I was the tabla player, but I also managed the band.
Okay.
So I was, and to be honest, I think that was my first taste of entrepreneurship.
Right.
And of leadership, because entrepreneurship in the sense that I had to go and seek out where the opportunities were for the band, negotiate with record deals, and from a leadership was to manage 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds, brilliant creative individuals, but to mold them in a team.
Yes, and that's very important. I mean, we do see pop stars and even sports personalities, without the right management, you know, things can go south.
Absolutely.
And it's very important to have the entrepreneurship leadership or the entrepreneurial brain to kind of, you know, to take things forward and to grow and develop that thing.
Absolutely. So I was a management consultant, and so I was working full-time as a consultant, and in the evenings we were doing these shows.
Yes.
And of course something had to give, because we were performing till 2 o'clock in the morning, so I wouldn't get back home till 4 o'clock. I'd sort of stagger into work at 6, 7 o'clock, eyes were red. And then of course I did the impossible thing, which was, because I had a dream that music was fantastic and that one day music would cross into the charts. So I told my people at work, I'm off, and they said, well, what are you going to do? I said, I'm setting up a record company. And I thought, what does a record company mean? Obviously I went home and said, by the way, I've just resigned. What, you've just resigned, what are you doing? Oh, I'm setting up a record company. Of course, all they could think, my parents, was a record company meant playing tabla.
Yes.
And if you're from India or understand the culture of India, anybody in music is normally at the bottom of the pile, not at the top of the pile. And normally to avoid that, you get educated. So my parents have said, oh no, you got 2 degrees, you got an MBA, a Master's from Aston University, you're doing what?
What are you doing? Exactly.
What are you doing? But you know, with entrepreneurship, and you know this, Abid, you need to have a passion, you need to be able to ignore the naysayers, the people who say it can't be done.
Yes.
And I think as an entrepreneur, you need to have that dream, so that's where I want to go. And then you have to have resilience, and we'll come to that in a bit with the COVID.
So you were also very instrumental in taking the Bangor scene in the 80s and 90s. Yes, it was big, but only within the Asian community.
That's right.
It wasn't mainstream.
No.
It wasn't on top of the pops.
No.
No, that's all top of the pops.
Yeah.
I mean, Bangor was very, very isolated, and for a specific audience. There were daytime gigs at the Dome and various clubs, but it was very isolated. You were one of the influential key figures to make it go mainstream. Now, before we speak about that, could we just play video 1, please? This was the turning point. many memories in that video. Can you explain that video?
Yeah,
What that video stands for?
Yeah, so I had a catalogue of Bhangra tracks, and so I then went abroad. So I went to a place called Nice, Cannes. We'd have the film festival, and all the record companies would come together, and I was trying to persuade them to take on Bhangra music. So remember, I dropped my job
Yes.
to pursue this dream of getting it into the charts, and I was trying to convince all these people, so Portuguese, Greeks, Germans, Americans, Vietnamese, you name it, Japanese, this music you need to have. They ignored me. I don't blame them.
It's a language they don't understand.
Yeah, well listen, they said, don't understand the vocals, don't understand the melody, don't understand the instrumentation. Mr. Singh, off you go. And you know, and I did that for about 10 years, but I had this track for 5 years, so I went every year I'd spent a fortune going abroad, going to all these places, trying to, and I remember on my 10th trip, I would always ring home to my wife and say, I've arrived, I'm safe, I'm just clocking into the hotel, and her immortal words were, so this is the 10th year, she said, I think you ought to give it a miss now. I think 10 years of trying to push Bhangra into the mainstream, I don't think it's going to happen. I think just leave it, do your bit now and just come home. And amazingly, that year, I struck a deal with a little Italian company, who then struck a deal with a little Turkish company, who then started playing it in the Istanbul nightclubs. It started to rip up the nightclubs.
Which tracks were they playing?
They were Mundiata Bachke, the one we've just heard.
Okay.
The DJs then took it to Germany, because there's a lot of Turks live in Germany. And then I got a call from Germany. It was summer, I was walking, the mobile rang. They said, we're from Germany. They said, we can't pronounce the tune. We can't sing it. Sounds a bit like this. Then they played it over the phone.
Saying Mundiata Bachke in German can be pretty strange.
So they said, is this yours? I said, yeah, this is ours. He said, fine, we want to license it.
So did you produce this track?
So I was the record company.
Okay.
So Punjabi MC produced the track.
Yes.
I owned the copyright, so my job then, a bit like Janak, was to go out now and promote it.
Okay.
It was hard, very difficult. For 5-6 years, nobody wanted to know, and previous to that, 4 years for Natural Catalogue, nobody wanted to know. So that was part of Universal Music.
Yes.
The German. So once that happened, then I was in Oxford Street in the summer, same summer, and I heard the track again. I turned around, so Oxford Street, London, and there was a Beatle there. And in the Beatle, they were dancing. The thing was, these weren't Asian people. These were white people.
Yes.
Then I knew we had a monster on our hands.
Wow.
And then I went back to Meedham, where they kept rejecting me. And when I left this country to fly again, I'd heard from the distributors that we were going for a number 10 in the mainstream charts. And when I got to Meedham, they announced the charts, and we went in at number 5.
Wow.
So we actually had a Punjabi track, a Bhangra track, in the top 5 UK charts. Straight away after that, we got a call from Jay-Z, little known rapper.
A little
known rapper. And they said, we'd like to feature on it. By using him, we were able to get into the American charts at number 7. We'd already gone number 2 in Germany.
Okay.
I think it was about 100,000 copies week 1. And then we registered another 9 number 1s. And in Italy, Ronan Keating was number 1. We knocked him off, and we went number 1 in Italy.
Wow.
So there's 9 number 1s. And for about a year, all I did was sign contracts and just negotiate deals. And so I learned a hell of a lot. And what I also learned then was surround yourself with better people than you. So I hired the best accountants and best lawyers to navigate through this, well, because I didn't know anything about this sort of depth of mainstream contract, to navigate my way through that. And you learn from people who are better, about what I said earlier. Surround yourself with better people you can learn from, because you then will become a much better person. Now, here comes the disruption. So we're doing brilliant. We're smashing it around the world. We're selling tons. The catalogue's doing tons. The Janak were playing everywhere. And what I didn't see coming was a little thing called Napster. And for those who don't know, Napster was a company that was downloading people's tracks for free.
Okay.
So people were now suddenly downloading. So they weren't buying these anymore.
Yes.
Or these.
Yes. These
or even these.
That's old.
Yeah,
That's old.
And they weren't buying any of these. And
Yeah.
suddenly they were downloading. And you know something, Abid, our business model was suddenly redundant.
Okay.
Now, this is what happens. I read about this model. So when a shock happens, think of COVID here, we first shocked. We can't cope. The brain can't cope with the shock. Then we go into denial.
Yes.
We don't think it's happening. No, we don't think it's happening.
Or it won't affect me.
Yeah. So you think, oh, this is not going to happen. Then once you realise it is affecting you, get angry. So when we start to get angry, we started to sue everyone.
Yeah.
So that's your spotty teenager next door to your old grandmother next door discovered the internet and thought, wow, this is great. So we started to sue all them. But of course we were never going to beat the customer's journey.
Yes.
So you go into shock, you go into denial, then you go into anger.
Yeah.
Then
you wake up to reality.
Then you start to accept, oh, hold on, we've got a problem here.
We need to adapt.
We need to adapt now. Yes. Then you start to grow because you've started accepted where you are. All those phases now happened, the shock, the denial, the anger.
Yes.
And you start to go, and I think that's where we are as businesses now. Now we need to grow, adapt, accept what's happened.
Yes.
Get the anger out.
Just get on with it.
Forget the denial now. It's happened, and just now move on. And those businesses that will survive are the ones who've gone through that phase and now moved into the acceptance and growing phase. But a lot of them are still further back.
Yes. And I've been speaking to many businesses over the past few weeks, and particularly after lockdown. I think when the lockdown was initially released, people were all excited and they came back out all excited about, we're going to open up our shops again. And then reality kicked in. The foot flow isn't actually there. The virus hasn't actually gone.
Nope.
We're being potentially forced to come out or encouraged to come out, but yet the risk, the danger is still imminent, is still there.
Let's just break that down. So we know when it first lockdown happened, it was easy to tell people to stay at home. That's the easy bit.
Yes.
Coming out of lockdown is the hard bit, because how do you do that?
How do you phase it? Yes.
And obviously the government has started to phase it, and we'll talk about the winners and the losers. So obviously the 2 meter distance was the first step. You can come out as long as it's 2 meters. And then very recently they dropped it to 1 meter, which has made a difference.
Which is where we are right now.
Yeah, which is where we are. So 4 weeks ago we couldn't have done this, because I would have had to be outside the room probably.
Yes.
That takes us to 1 meter. Now the only way we're going to sort this out is one of 3 ways. We know there's a drug now that if you're really ill, there's a chance you could survive.
Yes.
So that's one tick. We know they're preparing a vaccine, big question mark. Trials have started, big question mark. If the vaccine comes, I think there'll be some return to normality. The third one, which doesn't appear to be happening, where the R value goes to 0, in other words, it disappears.
Which is very unlikely to happen.
Yeah. So it's one of those. If we can get all 3, then we're on our way. And that's just a question of time.
It's about building the consumer confidence to come back out. I'm like, they've now announced that the restaurants will be giving 50% discounts next month, in a way to encourage people to come out the doors. And yes, there is a lot of people out there, but still, there's a massive portion of the population that are still worried, are still concerned, and are not too confident. So the way you adopted your business when downloading overtook the Walkman and the dare I say the iPod, or the iPod actually came after, didn't it? Yes.
So the phone was the main instigator, because the moment people knew they could just download it on here, these things became irrelevant.
Yes, I think before the phones, the iPod came,
and then
other devices came.
That's right.
So the phone's a very recent thing.
In terms of
yes.
So the thing was, what we didn't do, remember the denial bit?
Yes.
So we were like ostriches in the sand, head down, this isn't happening to us, it'll sort itself out, we'll be fine. Actually it wasn't. And then we had to adapt, and I adapted in 2 ways. One was to put the catalogue in a digital format, so that was the one way. And the second way is to say, right, looking at the marketplace, looking at our skills base, what else can we do to support it? Now obviously, having managed at Jarnock, I knew production, I knew lighting, I knew sound, I knew branding, because we were promoting acts as brands. I also knew video production, because we were doing marketing. So that became an obvious one to me, was that we would set up an event production company using that same skill base. So the record label continues, but we set up something else. And then over time, of course, we've been talking about Signature Awards, that really grew. Now we're in the same position again, that brand grew, now it's been hit hard.
Yes.
What do I now do? So for me, I'm probably not as phased as others, because I've been through it.
Yes.
The difference was that model had to completely evolve. We had to change it totally. This one is on hold, and what we don't know is at what point that can go again. We don't. That's the big uncertainty, and all those things we talked about, the R factor, the vaccine, and the drugs, they're all uncertain. That's what makes it difficult. Whereas before, in 2007, I knew that model was no longer applicable.
So, the music industry and entrepreneurship. I mean, I speak a lot about entrepreneurship, and I normally relate it to a sport. Music and entrepreneurship, it's obviously clear that with your entrepreneurial background and your skills and your leadership qualities, Achanak went from being just a normal local band to a international.
Yeah, we were touring a lot. Yeah, we were touring a lot.
What transferable skills were there? What skills did you, or what did you use? What formula did you use to change a band, a bunch of five lads banging drums and singing, into a world-class business?
I think, and also, what skills did I learn from that to then become a leading events production company? I think the difference between sport and music is quite stark, actually. So in sport, they teach you to set targets and to hit targets. So if I want to break the 200-meter record, then between now and the next Olympics, I need to do this, and these are the set of activities I need to do to get to that. So that's a very good planning process. So that really teaches you to plan, stick to plans. We call them KPIs, key performance indicators, and you can measure that. You can measure that as you go along. So that's one route to success. The other route to success is being totally creative. So actually, don't worry about the planning, but think about how you can be different.
But don't you feel people sometimes are scared of being different?
Absolutely, which is why those who do well, now let's take all the tech companies that are doing very well, they haven't got there because they planned well. They got there because they thought outside of the box. They were the creative thinkers. And I can tell you now, without reservation, the businesses that will dictate over the next 20 years are not the ones who are good at planning, but are the ones who are the most creative.
And good at adapting to what's in front of them.
Absolutely. So you've got to adapt, you've got to move, you've got to be creative, you've got to think outside the box, and you've got to think about things you haven't thought of before. Now, so if you think about music production, you start with a complete sheet and you say, right, what am I now going to produce? So you start to put a story together through your music. And through the story, you create things, you take risks. Now, I could tell you as a record company, I reckon out of every 10 albums I sold, 8 were dead, and the 2 were the bestsellers.
Yes.
But I was conditioned to take those risks. So I didn't worry about the ones that didn't sell well, whereas most businesses don't want to think about that. They want to say each one, and that reduces their risk taking. So I think you're much more riskier as a creative company. You'll take more risks, you'll be more creative, you'll think outside the box more, and if you can do that, then you're more likely to be able to know how and understand how to lead a team of creatives.
So you keep on using the word learn. You're older than me.
Absolutely.
Much older, I hope. I'm only young.
Oh, you're very young.
But you seem to be using the word learn, and by all these boards that you sit on and all these activities you do outside of your business, how important has this been for your learning?
Listen, it's been exceptional. We might as well tackle it now. We spoke about 5G.
Yes. 5G is my next question. Very controversial issue.
Okay, so
controversial issue.
Okay,
but you sit on the board of the 5G.
Yeah.
What is a previous Bhangra Group member doing on a 5G board? Just where's the link?
Well, I think obviously there's quite a few steps in between. So from the record company to breaking the global charts, which hasn't been done since, which, something I'm really proud of. And I hope we will do that again, and somebody else will do that again, because the glass ceiling is gone. We've proven
Yes.
the impossible is possible.
Yes.
And that's
in an era when technology wasn't so vast.
correct, and it was much more difficult.
Yes.
So the impossible is possible, and I still remain, and my record remains still as the only British Asian business or record company to have had 9 number ones.
Wow.
So that's something I'm proud of. And I'll tell you, Abid, when I switched on, and I'm sorry about the youngsters, but when I switched on Top of the Pops, and your track comes on, you don't realise the swell of pride you have that you are now dominating global charts. Now, that meant that I then applied the same creative thinking to awards, and to make sure that my awards night or my networking night was different from others.
Which it is.
Yeah, and I don't, and the best businesses don't worry about competition. The best businesses try to be the best that they are.
Yes.
So don't spend all day looking at the competition. Yes. Do what you're good at, and do it to the best of your ability, and you will shine. And Abid, you know that through your chutney and chat. Yes. You don't worry about what else is going on. Yes. You do your thing, you deliver it well, and if you deliver it well, you'll get what we call a community around you. That community will support you and help you through. So I think the global success helped. Then I contributed where I possibly could onto boards. Now, here's another big learning point. When I was growing up, Abid, there was a lot of racism. And most people of my age thought best to keep quiet and just duck and hide. And some people weren't very comfortable with the colour of their skin because of the problems they were having. Yeah. I actually believe today how you look and how you sound and your background is probably more important than ever.
Yes.
So when I sit in a board meeting, as long as I say something decent, because I look different, they're more likely to remember what I've said.
Yes.
So I think today's opportunity, today's youth have a greater opportunity to excel because of how they look than they did before.
Yeah, but to excel, as you say, is having the right support network around you and being in the right places. So sitting on such boards, and so many boards, I sit on a few boards myself, and the learning that you get, your contribution is very important, but as important and possibly even more important is the learning that you get from being on these boards, because
100%.
the people around you are of a certain caliber.
That's right.
And from these people you will only learn how to better yourself rather than,
And I think part of it is because you're contributing with your time and your skill set. So I'd say to people out there, if you've got a particular skill set and you can apply it for the benefit of your community,
yes,
then you're wrong to stay at home. You should be volunteering and saying, can I join?
The Asian community, unfortunately, and you're one that stands out. You're shining, the example of what can be achieved. But the Asian community generally tend to be very isolated. And if they have a skill set, it's not about sharing, it's just about doing it for themselves. How important is sharing that skill set?
But listen, it's very important, because now, we talked about, I removed the glass ceiling when it came to music. I'm hoping now people will think, well, if a British Asian was at the start, which 20 years ago a lot of people would have said was at a disadvantage, if he can now sit in the West Midlands Combined Authority Board, if he can sit on a LEP, if he can be chair of a £50 million budget for the Wolverhampton Towns Fund.
Yes.
If he can be chairing that, then why am I not?
What's stopping you?
What's stopping me?
Yeah.
And what can I now do? And I think events like yours, where people can come and network and learn from this, they were not around 20 years ago. These things weren't around. So look around you and say, where can I go and network? Where can I go and connect with people? Where can I meet influential people? Where can I meet people better than me? Where can I learn? If you're going with that mindset rather than, listen, I'm the baddest anybody's ever seen.
Yes.
I'm the best. I've got nothing to learn.
And I think we've all been down that journey.
Nothing to contribute.
Yeah.
Then I think you've got the wrong mindset. And I'm sorry, you're never going to achieve what you could have.
You spoke about Queen's Honours and Queen's Awards. Why should our community put their name forward, or how can they put their name forward? Because we're only corner shop owners or
No,
taxi
no,
base
no.
owners.
No.
So what qualifies us? And I've had this question posed to me, saying, well, why should I, or my loyalties don't lie with the Queen. Why should we, as an Asian community, go for these things?
Okay, I think if we nominate someone, let's start with the nomination first. We're nominating that person because they've done something good for their community. It's not about them anymore, it's about what they've done for their community. Or it could be to their profession, or it could be to their industry. So two things. Firstly, the person who gets it, actually, you won't believe what it'll do to them, because they'll have been recognised, and they'll have also known that someone's nominated them.
Yes.
And someone in London has said, this is good. That's
and
one.
It's not an easy vetting process, is it?
No, it's not easy. No, so you're going to have to have achieved something.
Yes.
So firstly, it's good for the person. It's good for the community from where that person has come, because the community says, wow, we've got somebody here who's just been nominated. Thirdly, very important, it inspires the next generation.
Yes, very important.
To say, they did this for their community, they got recognised for it, I should do the same. Nobody lives in isolation from their community. Everybody is part of a community. A business depends on its community. The community depends on the business for goods, services and employment. It's inextricably linked. And I think those who walk around with the shutters on and say, look, I get asked all the time, what do you think politically about Pakistan versus them, or India versus China? And I said, look, the last time I looked, my passport said British. That was the last time I looked, and quite frankly, I'm a nobody, because I don't have voting rights in any of these countries that will affect their foreign policy or their taxation policy. What you should concentrate on is concentrate on the community where you live and where you...
About it.
Well, look, easy, just drop me a call.
Okay.
I will then put them in touch.
That's an exclusive for our viewers.
I will put them in touch with the West Midlands Lieutenancy Office, and then we'll take it from there.
Fantastic.
So anybody you see out there who's doing a brilliant job for the community will do. And listen, I think there was a plea out there, and I might as well use the opportunity. If you know of people who've gone out of their way to help the community during COVID-19, 100% put their name forward. 100%, because they need to be recognised. They went out of their way, and we've already nominated a few people. Yeah. But if anybody,
there was a few shining stars throughout this period.
Yeah, and if we can push them, let's get them recognised.
Brilliant. Talking about COVID and talking about all the controversies, there was this massive controversy about 5G, and me and you spoke about this on an interview about 2 months ago.
Yep.
And off the back of that interview, you received a lot of negative comments. I received a lot of negative comments, and one comment to me was, tell Ninder to put a 5G mast in his garden. First of all, the 5G board, what's your role on that board?
Okay, so my role on that board is to ensure that the rollout of 5G across the West Midlands is a successful one.
So 5G is a technology.
Yep. So let's take our mobile phone. When you put in, you see normally the 4G.
Yes.
Now, where 5G is different, 5G isn't just for mobiles. 5G will affect the whole community. So let me give you an example. So 5G involves using what we call sensors, cameras. So 5G will mean that when you do make a call, we call it latency, the call will connect much quicker.
Okay.
So think about someone's just been knocked down. The last thing you need is a dodgy signal. You need to be able to make a call quickly. Also, latency is important. So if someone has been knocked down, ambulance arrives, they can now, through 5G, if we get it right, will take a video, relay it straight to the hospital. The surgeon in the hospital can actually help prepare the patient
en route to the hospital.
En route, because the signal on here, the latency and the quality of the transmission of signal is so good.
Okay.
Imagine now with COVID, people are discouraged from going on public transport.
Yes.
I sort of saying, can you drive in? Now, to avoid people driving around endlessly trying to find a parking spot, 5G will allow them to locate a parking spot before they even leave.
Okay.
So imagine that. Now imagine in a factory, or even NHS, I mean, that started to improve now. I think 6 months ago, they tried to convince consultants and doctors to do video consultant. They said, no, it will never work. It will never work.
Through COVID, it was forced through.
They're doing it now.
was forced
Now,
to.
5G will assist that because the signal on the video will be much better.
Okay.
You'll be able to diagnose much better.
But there's rumours that the 5G masts are being placed in bus stops, and there's been evidence of trees close to these masts where.
Okay. Well, okay. So, we heard all this, but Japan is the most advanced in 5G.
Okay.
It's one of the countries with the least deaths.
Okay.
So that doesn't seem to equate at all, because Japan should have one of the highest, and they're the most advanced in 5G.
Okay.
So there's no connection. The only thing I can think, and we spoke about this before, when the railways came, there was an epidemic, not a pandemic, so there's an epidemic in the UK, and everybody wanted to rip up the railways because they thought the railways were causing the epidemic.
Okay.
So when you see something that's...
And that was an era with no social media and no YouTube.
So I think it's a natural instinct for humans when they see something they're not sure about. So they weren't sure about COVID.
Yeah, but when 4G came out, I was involved in the mobile phone space at that time. There wasn't so much noise about it. We marketed it, and it sold really well. There was no such conspiracies at that time about 4G. So why 5G?
Okay, easy, because you have a virus that's bringing the world, and no one understands why it is there. So you have an uncertainty there. You then hear 5G is coming, and you don't understand 5G.
Yeah.
So you have two uncertainties. You put them together. Same happened with the railways. You had an uncertainty with the railway. You had an uncertainty with a epidemic. You put the two together. When 4G came, there was no crisis around to link it to something. It's just a natural instinct. One crisis, another crisis. Oh, must be linked.
So I have to ask you this question. And being on the 5G board and knowing everything you know about 5G, would you put a mast in your garden?
Yes.
You would put a mast in your garden?
Yes.
There it is, people.
No problem. The only thing is, I'm not sure my garden's big enough to accommodate such a mask. I wouldn't have resident. And I'll tell you one thing.
It'd give
me fantastic signal, and I'll be able to download videos and things so quickly.
Yes.
It'd be unbelievable. But look, cameras everywhere means that we can see things much quicker. We can see congestion quicker. We can move people into hospitals quicker. We can operate on quicker. You can predict when we get it right with wearable technology, when there's an ongoing problem inside you. Let me give you an example.
But there's people, well, there's a notion that it's becoming a big brother state, a big brother world, in fact. And with such technology, although it's got its advantages, there's many disadvantages, meaning we'll be tracked with everything we do. People will know where we are. People will know what we're doing, what we're talking about. Even, I mean, if your phone is off even and you mention something, a product, suddenly when you turn your phone off, all you get is adverts about that product. And this is with 4G. So with 5G, this is going to be stepped up quite a bit.
Two answers to that. Let me first give you another benefit. Now, they've been swabbing people for COVID.
Yes.
And it's not a very comfortable exercise. And when people go in with cancer or suspicions of cancer, they throw all kinds of things. Could you imagine swallowing a pill, and in the pill there's 30, 40 cameras that take pictures of you inside? And how immediate that would be. So there are considerable benefits to humankind, considerable global benefits to humankind. Now, you talked about the mobile phone. Throw it away. Don't have a mobile phone. Don't have a mobile. If you've got a problem,
without a mobile phone.
Well, listen. Throw the mobile phone. And you know what was funny? When I was getting those messages, they were using a mobile phone. They were using technology to tell me. But then don't use a mobile phone. Don't use the technology. Nobody's asking you to. But they're happy to take the benefits from technology. Something they don't like, they're ready to jump in. And they were tweeting me using mobile phones. Don't use the mobile phone. Job done.
Brilliant.
And I bet you
that's a very controversial issue covered there. And I'm hopefully we've answered a lot of people.
Listen, there's great benefits for manufacturing, employment, and finally, just a final finish. It's the sign of things to come. So unless you're digitally educated, so the schools have got to get this right. They've got to get digital skills in. Unless you're digitally educated, unless you've got a creative bent, back to my creativity, unless you can think outside the box, if you're a black and white person, I think you're going to have problems in terms of career. You need to understand digital, you need to understand that kind of skill set. The world is changing, and 5G is just part of that change. And if you think COVID's a problem, I thought business is a problem with my label. I tell you, the future. I had some brilliant figures. Somebody did some research and said 97% of SME owners and global big businesses said there'll be businesses set up tomorrow that we've never heard of. 93% said the global marketplace will be more competitive.
Yes.
I think it was another 80 odd percent said the skills today will be relevant tomorrow. So if you're going to be busy spending time shouting at technology, you're going to be left behind. And our kids, Abid, our kids are dragging us through this.
Yes.
They are dragging us, screaming.
A baby is born and wants an Apple phone.
They are dragging us through it.
Right, so we are running out of time. Parting words. Where do you see business in the next 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days?
Okay, so I think there are clear winners.
We're coming out of lockdown.
Yeah. So
this week has been pretty troubling in terms of job losses, redundancies, closures. Birmingham being the second city, we've lost some massive names.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of uncertainty. And I think the coming weeks we're going to see a lot more redundancies. So in terms of enterprise, in terms of entrepreneurship, in terms of businesses and job security, the next month, 2 months and 3 months.
Okay, so I'll tell you what I've done. So I've looked into my business. I've asked myself, what does my business do? What's its relevance to the people it serves? Look at those people and say, look, well, I can't talk to them at the moment through mass gatherings, but what else can I offer them in that space? And we're now setting up a series of podcasts. We're setting up a new digital magazine called The Business Influencer. So I'm glad you used that title. So we're going to be reaching out to the very community that we're working with. So we've had to think digitally. We've had to look at our brand. We've had to understand what our brand does. So every business should do this. They should look at their brand. They should look at their business and say, what does it mean to the outside world? Am I still serving them in the way they want to? They may not want to have done it personal, but can I do it another way?
Yes.
You have to adopt that exercise. So you have to start thinking outside the box. So we've done that with the digital space. What it then means is when and if is a long, big question, the events do get up again, we'll have already built 2 more businesses in the interim that will support it. So I would say to any business, look at your ecosystem. Do you have an ecosystem that can be widened so you offer more to the same people? I can't answer that question. They need to answer that question. Because if they don't, the losers will continue to lose. That's retailers are losing.
Yeah.
Airlines are losing. Who's benefiting instead of airlines?
But how could the retail sector change its ways?
Oh, well, look, a lot of them never had bricks and mortar. So they only had bricks and mortar. They never had digital. Yeah. So they didn't look at digital. We also know there was a big structural shift. We knew that, and it was obvious. High streets have been disappearing.
Yeah, this was happening before.
This has been happening. So listen, all COVID's done is accelerate. In my case, COVID's accelerated my digital products.
Yes.
We're going to do them in a couple. We'll do them now. So I think they've never understood the customer experience to be sufficiently better than online. And I'll be honest with you. Online, I've bought a lot of books over the last 4 weeks. Never went to Waterstones. I bought them through Amazon. So you've got to ask your question, can I digitize or can I offer my product through a digital approach, or what can I do different? Now, short term, 2 meters to 1 meter. The next step we're waiting for is when social distancing goes. These are the steps. Once you've gone past that step, then I think the next bit is this consumer psychology. Yes. We've been hot-wired over the last 4 months.
Stay at home.
Stay at home. In fact, the government did too good a messaging.
Yes. Yes.
Instill
fear in everybody.
They did such a good job.
Yes.
That now, we're not sure. Now, just to give you an idea, in Korea, where they've had a low infection rate, by the way, where 5G is very good. Just to remind you again, their cinema's been open since end of March, I think. So their lockdown finished in March, April, May.
Yeah, I seen the
latest figures were that still they had nowhere near recovered the people coming in, because people still had that psychology. So
but their track and trace app was working very effectively.
Very well. But what I'm saying, there's still that psychological thing. Yeah. I know the numbers were good when all the shops opened, but I think they haven't returned yet to their previous figures. I think, look, if a vaccine's in place, I think we'll be fine. I think it's another risk we take on as individuals now, because it may never go away. And I think what businesses now have to do is they have to be used to change.
Yes.
They can't sit there and say, this is predictable. That predictability is gone. Uncertainty now is the norm. Ask yourself, delve into your business model and ask yourself, how can I change? Like I had to do
Yes.
in 2007, and I've had to do again in 2020.
Yes.
I've had to do that as well. And you know something? You might have to change again in 2 years' time. So there are always there's a crisis. Churchill said, Winston Churchill, where's a crisis? Don't waste it. This is an opportunity for you to grow and to improve your business. There are more millionaires born in recessions than there are in good times.
Parting
Because
wise
people are forced to be innovative. So planning is great, but I'm sorry, but I think the planning model is now looking redundant.
Yes.
It's the creativity model.
And change.
And if you want to learn, if you want to get creative, go and learn an instrument.
Fantastic. Linda, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much.
For taking time out.
And thank you.
And viewers, thank you very much for tuning in. Hopefully, we've learned quite a bit from Ninder today. It's been very, very insightful, from an accountant to Bhangra to a influential UK business leader. Thank you very much, Ninder.
Thank you.
Please keep tuned into the channel. We show faith programs and community programs throughout the week. You can follow us on all our social media channels on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We look forward to seeing you same time, same place next week. Next week, I'm hoping to have a panel of business experts to discuss the next few months and how businesses should be planning to tackle the easing of lockdown and how we should be moving forward. Thank you very much for tuning in. See you next week. Gone.